Life and death, it's all a dance. Talking love and giving chance. Laughs and tears, we're here to share. Join us now, we're always there.
Hi, Jenna.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm a little sleepy. So last night, this really fun thing happened at like midnight till maybe like 4:30-ish. The smoke alarm kept going off and off. Like not the like cute little buzz, like warning your battery's low, like an actual smoke alarm. So I, when I finally hear it, jump out of bed like a lunatic and ready to stop, drop, and roll. And I go downstairs because then it stopped and it's been going off forever. Long, very long, not really long, but story short, I had to break the hard wire for it because it was wired to the ones upstairs. So
God.
yeah, it was fun. Yep.
Jenna, who are we having on our podcast today?
Today we have a very special guest. His name is Mike, and I have known him for quite a while. He married one of my fake cousins or chosen family that I grew up with. And he went through a journey with cancer at a young age. So he's going to talk to us about that. And he is a football coach and has coached for local colleges and universities and currently is a football coach at Pitt. So I am being the nice host and representing his team.
Well, Jenna, I want to explain that I originally was going to put I do have a Pitt.
I think you bought me this shirt.
I did.
I think you bought this for me.
I think I did too.
You 100% bought me this shirt.
You're so
You
welcome.
did.
Yeah, I remember it was on one of those like street corner shops.
Thank you.
I also have a Pitt jumper, as we call them here in England, and I apparently call them now too because I asked you what jumper you were wearing and you were confused. But my dad went to Pitt, and I, because both of my parents worked for Penn State, was given the option of choosing any university as long as it started with Penn State. So I decided this afternoon for you, to represent my alma mater, the Penn State Nittany Lions. You know, I thought it would be a good opportunity to really like break the ice with my new friend that I'm about to meet.
I'm sure that's a great introduction. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Nice shirt. Nice shirt. I'm representing.
I
You
like
don't
it.
want
I
to see
like
what
it.
that other girl's wearing. Uh-huh.
It's okay.
It isn't.
Hi, Mike. My internet's not working very well. I apologize.
That's okay.
So she'll just keep interrupting every time we speak, but she really isn't. It's kind of painful. So we have to like guess when she's actually speaking or just moving her mouth. All right, Noelle, would you like to jump in and see where your voice is?
Hi, Mike.
Hi, how are you, Noelle?
I'm fine. How are you? I'm so sorry. The internet is terrible here in England. Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself so I don't have to keep saying things and then 20 minutes later what I'm saying is actually heard by you guys?
Wow. A little bit about myself. Well, I'm 40, I have 4 kids, no time, and my biggest concerns in life are how I'm going to get to work on time and how I'm going to pick everybody up at home. That's the biggest concerns in my life, which is a good life. I've been coaching football for a career. This will be my 19th season, coming up 2025. Been fortunate to be part of winning programs everywhere I've been, and I don't know. It's fun. It's a unique lifestyle. It's changed. It's like every other job. I say there's aspects to it that are work at times. I mean, obviously the Saturdays in the fall are more fun than work, but it can be stressful at times. It's a lot on the family. We spend a lot of time working as coaches all year round, and so it's tough. But I'm very fortunate. Been married for 12 years. Going on 13 in April. My lovely wife, who does everything at home for us while we work, and honestly, I don't know how she does it, to be quite honest, but I'm very fortunate, very lucky to have her. Obviously with this podcast, my health is great. I've not had any major health concerns since 1995, and don't expect, hopefully, stay on that course.
So can you tell us a bit about what happened around 1995? Well, I guess before that.
No, honestly, this time, actually yesterday, Martin Luther King Day, it's funny this is going on right now. But 1995, about this time, was 12 years old. Was just a normal holiday weekend for my family. We actually, on Martin Luther King Day, we went skiing like Sunday into Monday. Came home, wasn't feeling well. Went through the week, much like every kid in America right now had this flu virus or whatever, something going on. My mom, single mother, had me and my brother. So taking us to the hospital was not always priority number one as a family. Not that she neglected us or didn't do things like that, but it was like, hey, I have to work. You need to stay here. She had a neighbor would check on us and all that stuff. But the next week on Monday, the week after Martin Luther King Day, she was going to work. I still wasn't feeling well. And she said, call me, typical morning, call me if something's going on. We're not going to school. She was working at the University of Pittsburgh at the time, which is ironic. She only worked there for like 3 years, but it was at the University of Pittsburgh. She was driving downtown. She got to the Parkway, turned around, picked me up and said, we need to go to the hospital, just off of a whim. And so we went to Ohio Valley Hospital because we lived over on the west side of Pittsburgh, and spent the whole day there. I think pretty standard case for anybody that has gone through a cancer diagnosis. Chest x-rays, this and that. We think you have pneumonia. So they put me on all these breathing medications. Nothing got better as the day went on. By the evening hours, they were like, we're going to send you to Children's Hospital. Spent the night there. The next morning, the oncologist came in and met with me first thing in the morning, diagnosed me within 6 minutes of seeing me. And that was the start of the journey. Was right there. So my mother tells the story fantastically, but Dr. Salvatore Lando, who since is retired, came in, looked at me. He's like, take your shirt off. Took my shirt off, put the stethoscope on my chest. Didn't even need it. He's like, Mom, I need to talk to you out in the hallway. As quick as that. And obviously she told him in the hallway. He like grabbed her by the shoulders, like, you need to stop crying. Go in there and tell your son what's going on. And so she came back in, told me, doctor thinks you have cancer. I don't know. She's crying, obviously. I knew of cancer, didn't know there was varying degrees of cancer. He followed her in maybe a minute later, asked me why I was crying, kneeled at the end of the bed and asked me why I was crying. And I said, I don't want to die. And he said, we're going to do our best to make sure that doesn't happen. And honestly, I started chemotherapy within hours. And then Tuesday, my mom calls it Tuesday from hell, was when we got diagnosed. We had, the bone marrow test, all the testing that goes on right away. And luckily, I was stage 3 Hodgkin's, so it did not reach my blood. But I did was a tumor that has compressed my lung, which is why my chest x-ray was white, because they thought it was fluid. It was actually a tumor. It was wrapped all the way around my one lung, and it was around my windpipe and vena cava, and essentially suffocating me. And he said this could happen over the course of 24 hours or a lifetime, that this thing could have been growing inside you. And I had chemotherapy, I had a treatment every day for the first week. They give you, it was like a 6% chance of survival at the beginning. By the end of the first week, it was like 72. And obviously Hodgkin's is one of the most curable forms of cancer there is. They were just worried. They couldn't do surgery because of where it was located. So it was chemo, so I did a week, I think it was 6 days at the hospital. They sent me home within a week. And then I was doing outpatient chemo through July. And it was, I think all in all, it was like 23 treatments through July. And then I went 23 straight days of radiation therapy to clean up everything around my thyroid and everything like that. My thyroid was damaged in the radiation, but that's obviously a small price to pay. And then since August of 95, have not had an additional treatment for it, and went through my 5 years of remission. I was 17 when I was pronounced cured, not cured, but out of remission, and then have been dealing with it on a yearly basis since then, and now reaching a point where a lot of people in my position have no clue what to do. And that's kind of where I stand right now. So right now I'm in the midst of working with St. Jude's Hospital through Children's, PCPs and things like that. It's unfortunately a very hectic time the more I find out about it. I guess with insurance companies, obviously, and PCPs don't really want to dip into some of the stuff that they ask of them. So I still go to Children's Hospital yearly to get follow-up appointments, and they've recommended a few cardiologists and things of that nature to see. But I did a lot of baseline testing, maybe within the last 5 years, and it's really where do we go from here is what St. Jude's is trying to figure out and put a plan in place for childhood cancer survivors that are in my position of survival of 40 years or whatever, 30 plus years. They really don't know oncologists don't know what to do, and PCPs don't want to deal with it. I don't want to say don't want to deal with it. Not all of them want to. And so they're getting a lot of blowback. So for my case, I don't need to see an oncologist on a yearly basis because of my health and everything. But I do need certain tests done in certain time frames. And that's literally what they're trying to do, is just put a plan in place that the PCP can say, hey, get a chest X-ray every 7 years. He needs to get this. Every 5 years it's this, 3 years it's this, and just to monitor. And that's where it's kind of just stuck at, So it's unfortunate, but that's the what we're dealing with. The community of childhood survivors are kind of dealing with the same things.
Do you have contacts, like other contacts in the community?
Yeah, I do. Not as much that have, but what St. Jude's does is they send out a quarterly survey. It's pretty extensive, and then they send out a quarterly review of those surveys. So it gives you, it's pretty detailed as far as what treatments people had, what medicines they were on, because everything I used in my chemotherapy they no longer use for medicine, because they've learned of long-term effects of that, which is medicine's changing. So it kind of just gives you health updates. Say this is the most common thing that people of this age, they talk about obesity, exercise, all those things are taken into consideration on those things. And it's honestly, it's pretty extensive on a quarterly basis. My follow-ups with Dr. Orlando, who obviously is retired, but he went from like full-time to working 3 days a week at Children's to he would just come in almost as like a volunteer just to check on patients. And the last time I met with him, we went all the way back through. He's like, I want you to know what you went through, what kind of medicines you were on, and just kind of gave me a roadmap. And honestly, he talked about the same thing any doctor talks about, like general health, obviously exercise, how important exercise is, and just keeping a healthy heart is probably the most functional thing you can do. And then obviously like cardiology, that's the biggest concern, is what is the heart impact from the medicine in later years is kind of the biggest concern. So I'm fortunate to be in an active profession, which keeps me young, keeps me active. Obviously kids too, but so knock on wood, haven't had any issues, nothing of even note of concern through my experience in the last few years. So
That's amazing.
Healthy.
Have there been times
Healthy.
where it has been more difficult for you as far as your mental health and just the thoughts about possible reoccurrence, all of those things that have been worse or better?
Yeah, honestly, I really just never cancer runs in my family. It's pretty common. I had maybe one instant, like obviously anytime I feel something funny,
Right.
It's not far removed from my head. Honestly, the most scared I've ever been was having children, to be quite honest. That was the most scared I've ever been, was taking, Francis, my oldest, to the doctor like the first time and being like, are you sure? Like, are you sure it's just this? And just going through that. So I will be one to bug a pediatrician, if something does come up, it bugs me. It doesn't, I don't say it bugs me, but when I hear something that I don't necessarily know, and I can't go back and say what I looked like at that time, so it's hard to say what it exactly looks like, but in my gut, there's a reason my mom turned around. So there was probably something unusually off at that time. But honestly, that's my biggest fear right now is just with the children. It's not even me, like bring it on, whatever it is right now. Honestly, like bring it on. Let's go. It as bad as it can be. I've my college roommate was a leukemia survivor, which is odd enough. Go to school. He called me. I'll never forget it. After our freshman year in the summer, he called me. He lived in near State College, and he was driving to Pittsburgh because they wanted him to see a specialist at West Penn. And here he got diagnosed with leukemia.
Jeez.
Misses the fall semester, comes back in the spring. Okay. It was like, that short stint of chemo and everything in the fall. And I'll never forget, it was right before Easter break. I walked into the room. He's bent over a garbage can. Blood is literally coming out of his nose and eyes and ears. And he's like, Mike, I'm effed up. This isn't good. And he went on a 3-year battle from that day with 2 transplants, 2 bone marrow transplants. First one got infected. They thought he was going to die. I mean, he was a football player. He was a 200-pound kid. He was down at like 87 pounds in the ICU. And his parents called us and like, you guys need to see him like ASAP because I don't know if he's going to make it. And then he ended up having a hip replacement from the infection. And then lo and behold, 3 years later, the school pays for all his schooling to go back to school and start over. Became a nurse. He's now a trauma nurse, ICU nurse at Altoona Hospital. Changed his entire profession. And oddly enough, this is even weird enough, during COVID, I was put on Jimmy. I never watched late night shows, talk shows. For some reason, Jimmy Kimmel was on TV during COVID, virtual, just in his room, virtual. And he's like, right before the commercial, this is like sleeping on the couch, woke up and it was on kind of thing. We're going to talk to a nurse from Pennsylvania who's going to meet his bone marrow donor for the first time. And it was him.
No
and I'm
way.
I don't watch any late night television. None. And put it on, and it was him. Met his donor for the first time. And this was, 4 years ago. And it was, 15 years from when he got diagnosed.
Did your roommate know that you had gone through your own battle with cancer, or was that something that didn't come up until his diagnosis?
Yeah, he knew. That's why he called me going through it. And like, I never really shared. Like, a lot of people really don't know, and it's not, I don't withhold the information. I just, it's when do you bring it up? Like, what's the purpose behind that? Like, the only time I really bring it up is if, we do a lot of things at Pitt on Thursdays. We call it Thankful Thursday, and it's always typically a patient from Children's Hospital, and that's when I'll bring it up and tell them, like, it's what I found out at an early age is, even in that moment of being in the hospital, there were kids there that had it way worse than I did. Even at that time, I recognized it at the time that, like, hey, I can still walk, I can still do a lot of things. And there was one girl specifically, she was going through leukemia at the same time, cancer ward. All the families get to know each other pretty quick because we spend a lot of time there. And, in a common area that Children's Hospital has where people can go, she was there, and I can remember her having 3 IVs coming out of her neck as opposed to me and my arm, just all the little things. And then doing the outpatient chemo, like just seeing kids that got blood, they were there every week. Every time I was there, they were there. One kid had a full blood transfusion every day. Every time I was there, full blood transfusion. So in the time, forced to mature quickly as a person, but also to recognize, like, I use it to this day. Like, guys, we lost a football game. Like, you have no perspective of what pain is, or what suffering is, or what true losing is, and even in that moment, it's not that bad. So I always joke it. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. We can live in our silos, and I do it too. We get in our silos and lose focus on what, people say you have your health, you have everything. That's the God's honest truth. Because until you're in that situation, you do anything to be healthy, anything. And you get a taste of it when you're sick, or when you're, you do have the sniffles or the flu.
Right.
12 years old to 17. That's a pretty pivotal time to be learning those things.
Mm-hmm.
And to have your eyes open to that. That's wild.
Yeah. And even then, like, my doctor, he's like, I was an active kid. He said, be a kid. Like, Mom, let him do as much as he can. He possibly can. He can't get worse. Obviously the biggest thing was hydrate for the medicine. So that stuff gets out of your system, and let him go until we can't go anymore. Let him do those things. So, I didn't miss seasons, obviously I missed a fair amount of school just with treatments and everything. And honestly, I said the chemo itself wasn't bad. It was the day after. The day after was horrible. That stuff was poison, straight poison. And that's walking into a hospital. I can still smell it. I can taste the iodine. I can taste the metal from it. But honestly, I'm thankful that blessings and curses. Oftentimes, the greatest blessing is the greatest curse, and the greatest curse is the greatest blessing. And I believe in that, and learn that from is it the it's the best thing that ever happened to me at the worst time, to keep my perspective and truly know what living a good life is, so I feel for people that, like my college roommate, I think of, man, if I could choose when, being a kid is when I'd want to deal with it. If I could choose healthy, I was thinking of him, he's 20 years old in college. Like, that's a terrible time. Your whole life is literally flashing before your eyes, and then how bad he had it. I recognize that. So I feel for it. I'm compassionate, but I always wanted to be a symbol that, these things happen for me. They don't happen to me. In friends that get diagnosed later in life, I tell them it's always about the next thing. What's the next thing? What's the next appointment? The next, don't judge your pain, don't judge your feelings, and just stay on task and get to the next thing, and that's all that matters, is getting to the next appointment or getting to the next treatment, and that's what matters, to have a simple short-term mindset in dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, and just don't be a judge. Don't judge how you're feeling, and just keep pushing forward and keep plowing forward, and that way you don't get depressed. You don't deal with those things. You kind of live in that moment and get through it. And I can just remember like checking treatments off the list, like check them off, check them off, check them off. And what's funny is that my last treatment was probably the most sick that I got. The most nauseous that I got was my very last treatment. It was probably all nerves.
Yeah.
That made me feel that way, nothing else. And grateful for the experience. Would never wish it upon anybody, but this, obviously medicine's advancing well beyond what it was then, and it's not a death sentence. That's my biggest thing. It's not a death sentence. It can be if you allow it, but it's not a death sentence, and you got to have some guts. There's going to be tough days, but the support system needs to be in place. And I can remember I didn't want to talk about it at the time. It's just, give me anything, but talk to me about anything other than me and my body and what I'm going through. And that's honestly all you wanted. And my biggest, charitable contributions in my life, I was a Make-A-Wish kid. Like, that's where everything and from a donation standpoint in my house goes. And I think they do provide a lot to the families in those moments. And that was a very bright spot through all that.
You said something about not wanting to talk about your disease or your body, and I have two friends that one is in remission from Hodgkin's lymphoma and one is going through treatment for it now, and one of the things that one of them had said was like, I feel like my body failed me, and like I'm really angry at it, and all these people are telling me that I have such a great attitude and everything, but like obviously they didn't choose to have that attitude. Like, it's not like they woke up and were like, ooh, I want to be really strong and powerful. So I think as a person supporting people like in that situation, what is the best way to not, I guess, focus so much on the disease? Is it just kind of to focus on them and like not so much on this battle that they're courageously fighting against?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think it's everything, but all you do is talk about how you're feeling with doctors, nurses, and it's my body. It's this. It's what did you eat today? Are you drinking enough water? And like everything is about you in those moments. And in that, I always say that the toughest ones to me is the closest support. So like family members, they want to help. You want to help? Just talk to me as if I'm not even here. You don't, even if you come and visit me in the hospital, you don't have to talk to me. Talk to somebody else that's there. Just anything to be distracted or to not talk about it, and not to avoid it, but just to I don't want to say normalize it, but to be just. I just want to be in the conversation. I just want to talk. I just want to be a conversation, just like we're sitting down and having a cup of coffee. That's what I want. I want to talk about the news, talk about anything, but with the obvious there, And I think to address it, I believe in humor, so I think like I've learned to deal with people is just call out what you see, make light of it. With small joke like the obvious, in those moments to me is a good way to break that ice and get out of that stage. People, it is a awkward position to be in support of that, because you do want to show concern and empathy, but just being there's the empathy. You don't need to address it, and people want to do more. You don't need to do more. There's enough being done already, and support and just be available and honestly just be you're a friend or a family member. That's who you are. And like I just remember that, like just people coming was enough. Just come, even if you don't talk, just be here, just be present. Yeah, anything to just get your. I don't want to talk about my body and what I feel. I feel like death. I feel terrible. You know what I mean? I don't feel great. I'm not. Even if I say okay, it's still relative.
Yeah.
I'm okay, but it's relative to the situation. And it is hard. It's hard to be a support on that. I can remember vividly my brother going through that. Nobody even talks about that. Like, my brother is 3 years older than me, so he's 15, dealing with a brother. So he goes to school. Everybody's asking at school. What the teachers are asking. Everybody, and who's taking care of him? My mom's at the hospital. Dad in and out here and there, and obviously didn't live. But like, who's taking care of him? Who's watching after him? Everybody's worried about me. And he was in that same situation. He's living it almost harder. In a weird way. Not that he never felt that way, but that's a tough. And I go back to like Make a Wish. Why Make a Wish is great? Because it's for the whole family. Because it takes its toll on everybody. I sometimes think the family members have it worse. Close friends have it worse. People ask about it, and you really don't know, and you want to do more. It's hard to do more. That support system doesn't get enough credit of going through it. The stress of it, dealing with it. And I can just, yeah. Where's my brother? My mom never left the hospital. I don't even know what happened to him. During that time.
Has your relationship with your mom and your siblings changed at all since that, do you think? Or was your mom more protective of you after you went through that, or was it sort of unchanged?
um, Again, it's early in life to recognize relationship change.
True.
It's funny. My mom and I, it comes up, like, my mom thinks about it probably more often than I would. I can understand that as a parent. And my brother and I now never really talked about it. We've never really had that conversation. We have, but never, two macho guys, we don't never want to get too deep into it. So we've had them, but never really had that like full circle moment. What was this like for you? And say that. But we've had our moments, but I think more. You want to talk about a 15-year-old kid at that time, maybe more resentment towards my parents in that time frame, understandably so.
Right.
But that little bit of like, what about my life? Was kind of, obviously I was a big topic of conversation for even years going through that. As he's entering late into his high school years, and I think more what kind of it's kind of weird as I went through high school and was picking up athletic accolades, this story kind of came out. I don't know where it came out or how it came out. The story came out. So I got a lot of like publicity locally for it. And I think that more than anything, I think wore on my brother a little bit because he kind of missed that time in his life. I was the story when he was going through high
Mm.
school. And then to see that, not that he wasn't happy for me and all those things, but I think that probably had more of a wear on him, in college and stuff when I was going through that. And like there was, yeah, I don't even know how the story came out. I don't know where it started from or who kind of broke it. It was probably somebody in the district that knew when I was a little kid type thing, and it came out. And then I won an award from Highmark at the time, and that was kind of it. That was, I guess, locally. I don't even think they do it anymore, but it was a local thing. That kind of picked up some steam, and then they ran a story, and then I got recognized by the All American Bowl, and it just kind of came back a full circle again, like my senior year, like everything kind of came back out, So I think that probably had more of a wear on him, was that it was weird for me, like at the time, like because I didn't tell people. Obviously, my classmates knew from that time, but it wasn't an everyday conversation or something that people would bring up.
So whenever that happened, did you see a shift at all with people that didn't know and now did, with the way they were treating you or acting?
Not really. Like, I don't know. I think my personality had a lot to do with it. I'm pretty easygoing and
Pretty easygoing. I would say
pretty easygoing. Yeah,
you
yeah.
are very
But
easygoing. That how their family is probably, if I would say easygoing, they would be the family I would go to, and it's the most amazing thing to watch, just how happy his kids are all the time, because that is exactly how they are. Not a care in the world, and I love it.
you should spend some behind some walls.
Oh, please,
It's
I
not
get
always
that.
that pleasant.
Of course.
But honestly, not really. Like I always, same thing. I've always treated people well. I've really not mean to anybody. I'm really not, and so I don't think it. I think it maybe would change if I didn't treat people the right way
Right.
or do things like that. But no, I had mostly I got was from teachers at that time. It was like, well, I never knew. It was or something along the lines of that was probably the most. But classmate for the most part, my classmates knew, and a lot of them lived through it. I can remember going back to class for the first time in middle school, and like they almost had like an assembly. It wasn't an assembly, but it was a like get together of like, hey, this happened. You know, it's not contagious. Honestly, that conversation of this is, you can't get sick from this, you can't do this. So there was a like reemergence into the school when I did come back of like, hey, this is what it is, and talking to the teachers and saying like, this is what concessions we have to make, obviously with missing class and these things. So there was a lot, I missed like I think all in all like 60 some days of school from January to June, which is extensive.
Right.
So keeping me on course, and like there's another one like teachers that bent over backwards to make sure that I stayed on track and did those things. And I mean, it truly was community at that time. Like, and it rare, maybe it was rare for the school. I think at the time, now that I think about it, like there wasn't. I can't remember past that how many people were diagnosed with cancer while I was going through school the rest of the time. We weren't a small school, but so I think just kind of the community thing was a big part of it. Going through it, obviously, Jenna, my mom was involved with everything. So she had a huge network of people that knew, you know what I mean? So it was a community thing, and her friends. And obviously the school I went to was a very tight community people. So I've always felt the ones that knew, and eventually if somehow they figured out or it came out that it kind of wasn't, it was never like, I don't know. I mean, I got the recognition on a media level, but I never felt uncomfortable or treated differently or talk to people concerned about it. It was never that type of thing.
And that could have also been a lot of your attitude. Like you said, you're so easygoing and you just kind of went with it. So it kind of pushed other people probably to be able to do the same thing, which is remarkable.
Kudos to my mom. I don't know, my mom in that situation of just going forward, full steam ahead, and beating it. And that was always the mantra. It's not going to happen the way that
Right.
it's going to happen how we want it to happen and be how we want it to be. And I think that's the strongest thing. And I think that's the message to anybody dealing with it is, it can, it can be bad. And I always said that's like the obvious. Like, tell me something I don't know. Give me some information I don't know. I know this can be terrible. I know this can be, but can we beat it? Can we do it? And let's focus on the right things. And you have to trust your doctors, as tough as that can be at times. You have to trust that you're in good hands. And we're fortunate in Pittsburgh to have, honestly, the best. I couldn't imagine. We actually just had a girl. She has a rare disease. She's waiting for organ transplant, and her family moved from Portland. They moved to Pittsburgh 3 years ago because of the best hospitals, and they've been
Wow.
living here since, waiting for that. And like I think of, all the things that I was fortunate to have at the time, and knowing now having kids, like we are fortunate to have in Pittsburgh one of the best children's hospitals around, and then also access to the best of the best specialists when it comes to
Yeah.
something super serious. And I think that is comforting as a parent. And then
Oh, yeah.
just dealing, like, you've been to children's hospital, right? It's insane. It's awesome.
It's
Like,
awesome.
it's insane how nice it is.
And I do feel like they're now working towards, like you were talking about, like incorporating things for siblings and getting them involved. Have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, I want to say emotional support as well, like different group things.
Yeah,
So
100%.
the kids can
Yeah.
join, which I think is fantastic. And the child life department
Yeah.
just kind of trying to bring the whole family together with the understanding that you shouldn't be there alone. Your family needs to be there with you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's taxing. There probably, you asked about my mental health. I said maybe there is deep down something, there when faced with something again that might show. because it has. It's funny when I deal with it from like the research and all the stuff that they're doing now. I do. There's moments where I'm like, screw this. Like I'm fine. Like I'm healthy. Like there's nothing I'm concerned about. And then there's a part of me that's like, well, if you don't do it, if you don't follow through with these yearly things and do it, like what the heck, you're an idiot if you allow it to get ahead of you and do those things, And it's funny. Like I think of the simple things. Like I'm not a beer snub, but I just don't drink anymore. I will. I don't like turn it down. I don't snub my nose up to it, but it's like little things. I'm like, the feeling of being active and doing those things, I'm good. Like I'm good in a lot of senses. Like if you see me at a party and I'm not talking, I'm good. I'm telling you I'm good. You don't have to ask me. I'm telling you I'm fine, and I'm okay not talking. I'm okay telling jokes and doing those things. I'm fine. If that's the worst thing that's happened to me in a lifetime, I'm good. I'm good. I'm living a good life.
That your attitude is amazing.
Did you always want to be a football coach?
No, I don't even know how I got here today. It's much like I get a lot of questions. A lot of people are always interested in what we do and like what the heck do we do, And I said it's funny. I think it's like any profession. It's a means to an end in one sense when you're 25. This is what I'm doing. Obviously, the game's the game, and I love the game. I love what the game supports and is about on a personal level. To say, I was always going to be a coach. I had no idea. I worked for 6 months. I was an accounting background. I was an auditor. I had an opportunity to coach, and at that time, it sounded way better than what I was doing. But then 5 years into it, I was like, this is no way to make a living. Like this is not it. Like what the heck do you do? And then I met a man in my young career he was an NFL coach that got fired and was in between jobs, and he really helped me in dealing with work-life balance and all those things that anybody deals with in any profession, in my opinion. That kind of like, where does my work stop and my personal life begin, and how can I be successful if I'm not working all the time and gotta go, and how to balance those things out. And it really helped that means to an end become like, hey, you know what, I can do this. And then probably 2017 had another career moment where I was like, there has to be more to this than what I'm doing. And honestly, I started reading, and I'm a big proponent for a lifelong learner. I started to read and then realized the more I read and the more I know, the less I know. And there's a whole world out there of psychology and mindset and mental game and all that stuff that has allowed me. So I look at coaching as a vehicle to spread knowledge, to be quite honest. It's not about football. It really isn't. It's not about winning and losing, because at the end of the day, I said nobody cares. Nobody cares if Pitt wins or loses.
Oh, I think people care. I think people care.
Oh, they care. They care. People care, but honestly, come February, nobody cares.
Oh, exactly.
Once after last night, national championship game, nobody cares.
Right.
Nobody remembers what happened November 2024
Right.
Versus Clemson. Nobody remembers that. So I said, it's in the moment, it may feel like your world, but honestly, it's 4 years of you lived a quarter of your life as a college athlete. Like your best years are ahead of you. The best things are ahead of you. Don't live and die in those moments. And I found out that's truly what drives me more than anything, is just being able to spread, knowledge. And even if it is that little bit of perspective on health, like, you talk to nothing like telling a player who's tore his ACL, like, hey, it's not that bad.
Right.
It's not that. I know a phone call the next day that could make it a lot worse.
Yep.
Than having a torn ACL. You wish you would have, and that go back to that perspective of it is like, it is a game, and don't lose sight of that. It's a profession for a lot of people. It's a life for a lot of people. It means a lot, but it's still a game. Being an athlete sometimes gets a bad knock. Sometimes it gets a good knock. People have good experiences. People have bad experience with athletes in time. And it doesn't have to one doesn't have to correlate with the other, so to speak. And you can be a good athlete and something else. You can be a good football player and something. So I tell the players all the time, like, remove the buts in your life. Don't be the good football player, but he treats people terribly. He does this. He does this. Always say add ands to your resume.
I love that.
It should be and good things. So, and use the sport for good, especially now with the platform these athletes have. with NIL and the things that they have ability and access to, they can do a lot of good, a lot of positive. And they do have experience to share. There is something about losing in front of 60,000 people. That's a unique experience. And they can use that for good in perspective. And it is hard. You put a lot of it's a good lesson in effort and work. You can do everything right, work as hard as you want and still not be the best, but you can, how much are you growing in that moment? As we all know, if you learn the most through failure. So to work hard and fail, and if you let that beat you mentally, you will fail. If you don't, and you know how to push forward, then you'll always be a success. And that to me is everything. Like, whatever hardships come, they're going to come. Someone somewhere said life is hard. And the sooner you realize that, the easier it becomes. Like, it's going to be hard. Every day is going to be hard, present new challenges. And once you realize it and can accept it, you can enjoy it. And like, it's just easy. This should be easy. This should be fun. This should be enjoyable. And, I'm grateful for any relationship I have. I'm not the best communicator with my closest friends, but I'm very grateful. And when I do get those opportunities, to be with them and share with them, like closest friends in this health history, like you understand people differently. And that's ultimately what motivates me is now, like, how do I pass this on to children who don't want to listen to me? You want to talk about a real challenge. My kids, they'll hear it from you, Jenna, before they hear it from anybody else. And they don't want to hear it from dad. So that's the new challenge in life is how do you, yeah. Oh, I know. Anybody that has a kid knows.
Yep. Noelle's wife is actually pregnant currently, so she'll know real soon.
Yeah, I'm about to know.
Yes. Yes.
About to know.
Yes. Well, any advice that anybody gives you is a lie. I'm just telling you that.
Did I not say that to you today? Did I not say that to you today on the phone?
Yeah.
Said the exact same thing.
And there's gonna be something every day that just melts your mind and melts. There's gonna be something every day. You're like, nobody told me about this one. Nobody told me about this one. It's just
that's awesome.
But that's the patience. The training of patience is the hardest.
Yes, it is.
Because the kids are so much like you, they drive you crazy. They're so much like you.
They definitely are.
The little you. They talk like you, they think like you. All your bad habits, they have them. Yeah. All your good habits, they have them. And it's the reality.
It is.
It is the reality.
Mike, I think if you have any free time, which I know you don't, you need to start talking at high schools to athletes. And telling your story.
Mike, I feel like I want to be you when I grow up. You're so inspirational.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Mike, have you had any players that have had a cancer diagnosis that you've interacted with at all, like since being a coach?
Actually, no, which I'm grateful for.
Okay.
I have not, but we've have had some tough dealings. We've had a couple players pass away. We've dealt with that before. Most recently, it was a kid died during COVID. That was tough. That was tough on multiple reasons. That was my son knew him, so that was a tough one. Dealing with that, and my son loved him, which is even worse. Kind of going through that experience. And one thing that I always mention is that everybody has dealt with cancer in some capacity. That's not far removed from anybody. Not even cancer, any life-threatening illness, period, or anything. Nobody's 2 or 3 people removed from dealing with something. So it's more common. The feelings you have are more common. Now, you want to talk about motivation. I'm a huge Fred Rogers fan.
Yes.
Read his books. I could listen to him speak for days on end. And I think he's one of the most simple approaches. Obviously, I know it's very complex how he does it, but it's a very simple approach to dealing with anything. And I think you try to draw parallels. And a lot of times I learned this. So my mom's sister is a Lutheran pastor. My grandfather was a Lutheran pastor. I get a lot of my speaking from them, like my family. That is very present in my family. But I remember my aunt adopted 2 African-American children. And I can remember during COVID, Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. And I said, like, what is the one piece of advice you could give me for dealing with African American athletes at that time. It was a very hostile time. Being a white man in charge in that moment was real. It was a real conversation. And she said, whether it's dealing with that or anything that you've dealt with, what you're asking about how to be there for somebody, is honestly just listen. A lot of people don't have enough time. There's not enough people that just listen. Think of Fred Rogers. I think of that. There's an awkward silence. There's an awkward pause. There's an awkward moment of listening and engaging. And I think everybody says they don't want to hear themselves speak, but that's a lie. We love to talk about ourselves to our deepest core, and it's just a matter of, can somebody get that out of me or not. So I think listening, silence is a big tool. Allows people to process information and truly get to know one. And I think listening is ultimately what you can do. You don't have to ask prying questions. You don't have to. You just need to be an effective listener and know what questions to ask. And you can find out a lot about somebody very quickly when you do listen and know how to engage conversation. And I think that's a lost art in our society, much like writing. So the power of a note, a handwritten note, is still omnipresent. It has way more meaning than any text or anything that you could get. And like, to me, it's the simple things. When I think of talking I've coached players that do as I say better than I do as a coach, that have lived that life and gone on to do great things. And it's cool. Like, I'm a reborn as far as coaching and the mental game within that and all the things that create a positive life experience. And it's funny, the more I read, the more I do it. What I find out most about most people is most people want the truth, good or bad. And I think of myself, I want the truth. I don't want the doctor to come in and sugarcoat it. I want the truth. Tell me what I'm actually going to be dealing with. Tell me what I'm actually going to be doing, not what you think or want me to hear. The truth can be hard. It doesn't have to be the brutal honesty. It doesn't have to be brutally honest. It has to be a conversation about the truth and reality and the things that you're going to deal with. And I think that's ultimately what everybody wants, right? And it's funny, the closer our relationships are, the more we massage that and the less like we are to be as truth. I don't want to say we're deceitful, but the truth is harder the closer the relationship is sometimes, especially when it's the bad truth.
I have to say, your athletes that have had the privilege of working with you, I can't even imagine just coming in to either whatever school you are coaching at currently, Pitt, with one way of thinking and then just going through the program with someone like you. And I'm sure there are other coaches that you're coaching with similar, and just being able to see the growth of these students and these athletes and just having you as a support. I can't imagine how lucky they feel.
I get a lot of good feedback.
As you should.
From them. And I said it's funny. I always said, when you speak to the masses, every kid hears something different every time. So like, I believe in repeating messages, and it's funny. Like, I could say one quote. I always use quotes. I always use stories, and you could tell one story 10 times and they all will hear it differently.
Yep.
And they will pull whatever they're dealing with. They'll hear a different part of it. And it's funny. I'll get an email from a guy from 10 years ago that brings up a anecdote from one time in one moment, one time said, and that's the one thing that he hangs on to and will use. And it's funny, like, and for me, I can't even remember. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Mike, at the end of every episode, we always each share a glimmer, which is the opposite of a trigger. And so Jenna said she already has hers picked out. So Jenna, what is your glimmer that you would like to share with us today?
My glimmer today, and this hit me like a couple minutes ago, I cannot even express how much I love hearing Mike's kids playing in the backyard. It literally brings me so much joy just to hear them having fun and playing. And I could probably do an entire episode just of things that I have seen them doing that I'm like, oh my Lord, I love them so much. Like, they're fantastic. They are constantly like physical, moving, like using their brains. Nothing is like pre-done with them at all. And I love it so much. And it's such a joy to watch them and watch them grow up. They're the sweetest, like craziest, but the like craziest in the best way, kids.
Yeah. They are. That means a lot.
They are
I'm glad to hear
awesome.
that.
My glimmer is that today I learned from my wife that the British
geez.
people call crossing guards lollipop ladies.
That's a real thing?
They call them lollipop ladies.
Lollipop ladies.
They're holding the stop sign.
Because of the stop sign?
Yep.
Oh, good. Yeah, totally.
And
Didn't get that.
today there was a lollipop man. We didn't know what to do with that.
Wow.
Nice.
So you have these
Nice.
lollipops just hanging around.
Oh no, we were driving and there
Oh,
was
wait.
a lollipop lady that said, "Oh, look, a lollipop
good.
lady." I was like, "What? What is that?" Crossing guard.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually love that you're still
Wow.
learning all these things after being there for 3 years.
Oh my gosh, I know.
It's
Never
awesome.
ends. Truly never ending. All right, Mike, what's your glimmer, sir?
The obvious is the little Poppy, my youngest. She wakes up, so I'm at the office at 7 a.m. every day. So she wakes up at 5:30 with me every morning, hair a mess. She drives me crazy because I just want to go back to sleep for everybody's sake in the house. But she's up, and she's, babies in the morning are like or little kids in the morning are the greatest thing ever. They're like rested, they're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. She's my killer, but that's every day. But honestly, Noelle, Jenna, this is relief for me. This is fantastic. It's a platform to share good stories and good messaging, and honestly, you guys are inviting, and I really appreciate it. Like, this is a glimmer for me, honest to God. This is rejuvenating after long hours in the office after the season, and these are the little rejuvenations that keep me going. Hopefully, I'm on the right path.
Oh, you are.
And,
You're on the right path, Mike. I can tell you that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
This has literally been the
can't-
worst, internet.
It has
It's
been
like we're
terrible.
having 3 completely different conversations.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Life and Death podcast. Please be sure to leave us a review and comment to let us know what you thought of the episode. And don't forget to follow us so you never miss an update. You can email us at lifeanddeathpodcast@gmail.com. You'll find Jenna on Instagram under the handle Jenna Marie Life Coaching, and I, Noelle, can be found at Noelle E. Carlin.
Life and death through ups and downs, finding smiles beyond the frowns. Stay with us, we'll light the way. See you next time, bright and gay.